Thanks for staying with us on DD India. You're watching Doctor's Chat. I'm Sakal Bhatt. It's the Indian scientists who identified Delta variant or Delta plus variant and submitted to the global database. And since then, it has actually spread across to more than 80 countries. Now, on Doctor's Chat today, we're going to explain to you in detail what do we actually understand by these variants? What are the distinguishing factors between Delta and Delta plus variant or variant of concern as it is called? And most importantly, we're going to examine is Delta plus variant more severe or highly transmissible than the Delta variant, and is vaccination the one-time solution even when we talk about the mutations and various variants that continue to come to fore? And to do so, we're very glad to have with us on the Doctor's Chat Dr. Krishna Reddy. He's Country Director, Axis Health India. In fact, Dr. Reddy has had a very long and distinguished career in India as well as abroad. Internationally, he is recognized as the pioneer in primary health, digital health, as well as integrated healthcare. Dr. Reddy, it's such an honor to have you with us again on DD India. Thank you so much. Let me quickly simply start by asking, if you could just explain to our viewers, what do we actually understand, distinguish between Delta variant and Delta plus variant? What are these variants all about? And when we call them the variant of concern, how serious is it?
Yeah, any viruses or any bacteria, as they multiply, they mutate. So some of these mutations are advantageous to the virus, and some of the mutations are not advantageous to the virus. So when they become advantageous to the virus, so it may increase its transmission rate, it may increase its binding to the receptor, or it may also evade the existing immunity in the person. So when these advantages accrue to the virus because of the spontaneous mutations, we call it as a variant of significance or variants of interest. But some of these characteristics are actually of concern. For example, if suddenly the transmission rate is 50% higher, or its receptor binding efficiency is much more than the earlier version, or it is able to evade the prior immunity either because of natural infection or a vaccine, then it becomes a variant of concern. So that's how, from the original virus, which started the pandemic last year, then we had the Alpha variant in the UK, and the Beta variant, which came in the South Africa, Gamma variant in South America, and then we had the Delta variant, which was identified in India. Most of these variants are having the mutations on the spike protein.
Okay.
Protein which binds with the receptor in the lung cells. So the Delta variant and the Delta plus variant, there is one mutation which is differentiated between these two. But in terms of the evolution, it pertains to the Delta variant evolution. That means it carries some of the mutations unique to the Delta variant. In addition, it has one more mutation called N417N. So this is the mutation which was noted in the South Africa. So the concern between the Delta plus and the Delta variant is that the Delta plus has this mutation which might confer the resistance to the existing immunity. So that is the difference between the Delta plus and the Delta variant.
So is that the reason why Delta plus variant is more severe or highly transmissible than Delta variant? It's this additional mutation that makes the difference?
The Delta variant itself is highly transmissible compared to the Alpha variant. The Alpha variant was almost 40 to 60% more transmissible than the original variant. Then the Delta variant, which underlies our second wave, and also which is now spread almost across 90 countries in the world, itself is about 70% more transmissible than even the Alpha variant, which was noted in the UK. So the Delta plus variant, it is still not clear whether it is more transmissible or not. Initial findings suggest that it is slightly more transmissible than even the Delta variant. That is one. But more concern is that it is more efficiently binding to the receptor than the Delta. Then the Delta plus is also might have a resistance to the existing immunity. For example, already say 60% of the people are having seropositivity. That means they already have a natural immunity. This new variant might escape that immunity. That means there may be a chance of more reinfections.
Okay, I was coming to that. So how does this translate into severity and rapid transmission of infection?
So there are two things. I mean, the severity may be similar to the Delta variant, but it might, as I mentioned, cause reinfections in people who had a prior infection, especially people who had infection last year because the strain was different. Or it may also have so-called breakthrough infections even after 2 doses of vaccines. Because if the Delta plus variant is resistant to some of the existing vaccines.
Okay.
For example, in the UK study, when they compared mRNA vaccine with AstraZeneca vaccine, which is our Covishield vaccine, their effectiveness in preventing hospitalization, that means moderate to severe infection, was almost 90% plus. But their ability to prevent infection was significantly less. That means they may not prevent infection as much as earlier, but if the people develop infection, it may not be as severe. So at least the vaccines have that effectiveness to prevent severe infection, might prevent hospitalizations, and also might prevent deaths.
Well, there are some reports suggesting that most of these variants have been reported. We're talking about Delta variant, obviously, in Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Madhya Pradesh, and Kerala. Any observations as to why Delta variant or Delta plus variant have the cases have been concentrated in certain states or in certain pockets? Is there any correlation to the climatic conditions, to the maybe some coastal states? What are the determining factors? Are there any observations why in certain parts of the globe, why in certain parts of the countries?
So, I mean, the mutations tend to happen in areas where there is a more transmission. That means if more cases are there, for example, in the beginning of second wave, Maharashtra and Kerala recorded the most number of cases per day.
Okay.
So the more the people the virus infects, that means the more replication is happening. If it is more replication, that means more chances for mutations.
Okay.
So naturally, you will get mutations in the areas where there are more cases. But it is only a question of time before it spreads to the rest of the areas. Like the Delta variant, which started in Maharashtra, then now you see across the world, 92 countries plus. And in fact, in the UK, the current wave, 98% of the mutations are Delta variants. So wherever it comes, because it comes in an area where your containment is poor, the number of cases are more, so the virus has a chance to mutate more. So the chance of new variant coming is much more in areas where the containment is not there.
Okay. And in terms of symptoms, are there also some sort of differentiating symptoms, Delta plus symptoms or Delta variant symptoms, or just COVID-19 symptom?
Yeah, symptoms wise, at least as far as now, there is no significant difference in the symptoms as of now.
Okay.
But the chance of infectivity, because after a person exposes to a positive case, with the first wave, we had about 5th day, it used to become positive. So we used to test these people on the 5th day. Whereas with the Delta and Delta plus, you see their infectivity within 3 days. That means there is an earlier infectivity probability with these people. But in terms of the symptoms, we don't see significant difference in the symptoms. However, the need for more oxygen was significant with the Delta variant compared to the original variant. The number of patients requiring high flow oxygen and NIV ventilation, definitely it was higher compared to the first wave. Secondly, the positivity rate is persisting up to 3 to 4 weeks compared to the first wave, which used to be only 7 to 10 days. That means people require a longer period of isolation to prevent transmission compared to the first wave.
Sir, that point of stronger binding to receptors of lung cells, I'm talking about the Delta plus variant, why it is being classified as variant of concern. Could we say that that was also one of the reasons we saw this sudden surge of cases during the second wave, particularly the oxygen deficiency, which led to oxygen deficiency, and there was a pattern to it?
Yes, I mean, the virus load we saw with the Delta variant was much higher compared to the first variant. So if there is a more virus load and more binding capacity, that means more lung cells will be infected. The more lung cells will be infected, the more damage will be there. The more damage means more oxygen support.
More oxygen, yes.
Support will be required.
So it basically makes your respiratory tract more vulnerable. I mean, this particular variant.
Yes, I mean, as I mentioned, that is the reason also you saw the oxygen shortages.
Yes.
I mean, normally, patients used to be maintained with 4 liters per minute of oxygen. But in this wave, we were seeing patients requiring 20 liters per minute, 30 liters per minute to maintain the saturation above 90%. That means that there is a lot more damage to the lungs in the second wave. So the concern will be that the long COVID manifestation may be higher with the second wave Delta variant compared to the first wave.
So the second wave, we can say that the kind of outbreak we saw in the second wave of COVID, I'm particularly referring to what we saw in April and May, were mostly led by Delta variant?
Yeah. Yeah, as far as the genomic surveillance data is there, at least 60% or 70% prevalence was there of the Delta variant during the second wave.
So where do we stand today now? Where do we stand today?
As we stand today, I mean, in terms of course, it has declined, but the rate of decline has slowed down. Once the states have come out of the lockdowns and other things, the rate of decline has slowed down. In Kerala, we are noticing actually there was a slight rise in the recent past, I mean the recent week. The concern would be that is there the new variant, the Delta plus is taking over. That is one concern will be there. The second is at least, I mean, some of the initial zero prevalence data from Delhi and Mumbai, I mean, how scientifically rigorously conducted they are, but at least they were indicating a zero prevalence of almost close to 70 to 80%. Compared to the first wave, zero prevalence was around 26%. So
what is zero prevalence, if you could explain it to our viewers?
Yeah, for example, I mean, each wave, when the virus infected, only few people became actually positive. That means they became symptomatic and they became positive. So during the first wave, suppose 40 people got actually infected. Only one person was positive.
Oh.
That means 39 people did not know that they had COVID.
Asymptomatic.
Yeah, asymptomatic and could be detected only when you do the antibody testing after 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 1 month. So if their antibodies were positive, but they never knew that they had an infection, that means they had a silent infection.
And how, before you, just a quick question, how brutal or dangerous can be this silent infection of Delta variant?
No, silent infection is good in the sense that at least you haven't developed any illness.
No, in terms of transmissibility.
Yeah, that is dangerous because then people don't know who is infected
Yes.
because they can still transmit to others. So if somebody has a symptomatic infection and some elderly people are living in their house, and those elderly people are vulnerable because they don't know that one of their family member already has an infection. So that transmission point of view, there is a disadvantage. But when we look at herd immunity point of view, for example, if 80% of the population is already seropositive, that means that is the number of herd immunity. That means you have reached herd immunity in the population. Unless a new variant escapes this immunity, this protection, at least the chance of another wave seeping that area where there is 80% seroconversion is least likely. So, in fact, one of the strategy in terms of planning for the next wave to do that sampling of seroprevalence in geographic areas to understand in the second wave what percentage of population got actually infected. They might have been asymptomatic, but actually infected, and they have some protection. They already have some immune protection. The chances of them getting serious disease requiring hospitalization is far less.
Okay. Okay.
So after even asymptomatic infection, it is demonstrated that they will have reasonable protection up to 1 year or even more. Because the pandemic is only 1 year, at least we know that up to 1 year there is a protection. Almost 92%, 93% protection is there. I mean, almost like a vaccine.
Absolutely.
But the new variants might escape, like you are seeing in Peru, South American Peru, because the new variant called Lambda, that is after Delta actually,
Yes.
despite there was a high seroprevalence earlier, now still another wave is coming and another set of people are coming because it is evading the initial protection. So that is the only risk. So in terms of herd immunity, either by natural infection or herd immunity by vaccination.
So the vaccinated population is the safest. The vaccinated population is the safest, and the and the unvaccinated population is more vulnerable. I mean, to break it down further, to understand it like this.
Yes, it's definitely. Suppose even if you had an infection earlier, okay, if you get a vaccine, booster that is given by the vaccine, even a single dose vaccine, will be effective against new variants. You need adequate titers of antibodies, that means adequate amounts of antibodies to counter these new variants. So even if somebody is infected, if they are getting a vaccine booster, even a single dose vaccine booster, the antibody response is manifold compared to a native infection. So as you rightly said, vaccinated is protected. In fact, when you look at all the data, whatever deaths are being seen in countries which are getting vaccinated are seen mostly in those who are not vaccinated. Very rarely deaths are seen in those people who got 2 doses of vaccine.
What are the kind of studies that are underway to see the impact of the vaccines that we have now on these variants, or the mutations for that matter? Because as long as we have the virus, Dr. Reddy, we'll have mutations. And as long as we have mutations, we'll continue to fight. And I believe that, and we do understand that there is a R&D on the vaccine front will keep happening. It's an ongoing process to combat these mutations, which is something which is not, in our control. It's not in our control, is it?
Yeah, I mean, so that's why, I mean, there has to be a continuous surveillance, both the genomic surveillance, the clinical surveillance, and epidemiological surveillance. And every new variant identified by the genomic surveillance and variant of interest or variant of concern, immediately the vaccine companies will test in vitro whether the vaccinated people's sera is protective against the new variant. That is a lab level testing whether the vaccine is going to work or not against the new variant. Then similarly, the epidemiologists who are closely monitoring the clinical behavior or epidemiological behavior of the new variant we'll try to understand, is it more transmissible, is it more lethal, or is it more persistent? Because accordingly, then we have to issue the treatment guidelines, the containment guidelines, the surge capacity guidelines. So this intense surveillance, the digital surveillance, genomic surveillance, public health surveillance, I think these three surveillance are critical in preparing the system to face any new variants.
Dr. Reddy, that comes to the question that do we have enough data as far as these mutations or these variants are concerned? What I'm trying to ask you is that today we have Delta and we have Delta Plus, and there is a possibility that we'll go on more, I mean, different nomenclature and more variants could come up.
Yeah, you already have the Lambda and Kappa. So 2 more variants have already come. In other countries, not in India, but in other countries, already 2 more variants have been noticed. But so what's happening is all the people who are doing this genomic analysis, I mean, in India, we have INSACOG, almost 20 labs which are doing this. UK is doing the maximum number of genomic sampling. So every country is doing the genomic sampling, and they're immediately uploading the data into the GCAD, the global repository of all this genomic data. So the whole world knows exactly which mutations are happening, which lineage is happening. And then based on the clinical and epidemiological information, then each country identifies that, yes, this mutation may be a variant of concern or variant of interest. So there is a continuous, almost daily monitoring of this data by every country so that we are current with the variants. I mean, we catch up the variants at the earliest stage rather than before it already took hold in the communities.
So basically, it boils down to one big fact that the continuous monitoring of these mutations of Delta variant and Delta Plus or variant of concern to track the potential vaccination escape and increased transmissibility as well as the severity of the disease is extremely important. The monitoring of the mutations.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I mean, I think every country is trying to learn that the active surveillance, I mean, we are used to doing a surveillance of slow diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, HIV, but surveillance during a pandemic or surveillance during a rapidly spreading epidemic, we have to use the new age technologies in terms of the molecular technologies, the digital technologies, especially mobility of the people and our sales of the drugs, sales of the diagnostics. So we have to think of the new age technologies to improve our surveillance methodology so that we can contain the pandemic before it actually spreads across. In fact, a lot of countries are now again coming to the drawing boards to learn from each other how to strengthen their surveillance system so that the people's lives can be secure. So the pandemic preparedness in terms of surveillance systems, in terms of how do you prepare your delivery system for the next wave? For example, we had 400,000 per day peak. At each district level, actually each district level should know how many beds are there in the district, how many ICU beds are there in the district, how many ventilators are there. And if the same peak happens in the next wave, I mean, it should not happen, but if it happens, is the district prepared for that? If you don't do this type of analysis, and if you don't have a data, each district-wise, I mean, we don't have to look at national level. Each district should have, each district collector should have that data. And there should be a ground-level surveillance system. This has to be done locally. This has to be locally, and we have to do these systems. It's not difficult. And it's not just enough to know that how many beds are there in the government system. You have to know how many beds are there in private system. And how many doctors who are capable of managing ventilators. If there are not enough doctors, can we do telemedicine of critical care doctors from elsewhere? You need to have a planning for a worst case scenario.
Dr. Reddy, yes, you know, you really simplified the distinction between Delta variant and Delta Plus variant so much at ease. Final word, Dr. Reddy, from you. again, your message to the viewers of Doctors Chat, especially we are talking about why the saturation of population is extremely important to combat the impact of these variants, whether it is Delta, Delta Plus, or because like you just said, the mutations will continue. So we have to be prepared, and the answer lies in vaccination.
Yeah, I mean, the final message I would give is the simple containment measures of face mask. It does not differentiate which variant you have. That is the only thing which can protect any variant. The double face mask or the N95 face mask, if it is more transmissible, the hand washing, the social distancing, I think that still has 80% effectiveness in protecting against any variant compared to the drugs and the vaccines. So my emphasis is on don't let guard the COVID appropriate behavior. The second emphasis is on continuously monitor for the variants, have a quick response and the plannings guided by scientific evidence. I think it requires a lot of scientific evidence on the go. I mean, we cannot wait for the data to be accumulated. Yeah. We should leverage this scientific evidence. I mean, the money invested into this evidence will actually save a lot more money and the lives. I think, yeah, my message is these two things, COVID appropriate behavior until the pandemic is declared over across the world, not in your country. The second, a robust surveillance system. The third, the preparedness at a district level, not even at a state level, at a district level preparedness in terms of the capacity of the health system to respond to any next wave due to any variant, not only COVID, even a future influenza pandemic.
So surveillance has to be extremely robust simultaneously, and monitoring of these mutations, right? Thank you so much, Dr. Krishna Reddy, for joining us on this edition of Doctors Chat and explaining to our viewers in great detail the difference between the various variants and its impact vis-a-vis symptoms, and why vaccination is one-stop solution, one of the important solutions. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us in Doctors Chat.
Thanks.